Welcome to Bougie and Boring, a spa business podcast. I'm Amanda, your coach and a fellow spa owner. I help estheticians create a business that is elevated and effortless, or what I like to call bougie and boring. If you want a spa that pays you well and does not depend on you 24/7, you're in the right place. Let's get right into it. Hello, spa owner. This is part 2 of our 3-part series on a 90-day employee reset. Last week, if you missed it, we talked about why clarity is the foundation of good, high team performance and how to identify whether a team member has a gap in their support needed, or maybe it's a gap in the fit of them and their role, and how to open that first conversation with your team member with intention. Today, we're going to be focusing on 2 things that determine whether a reset actually works after the very first conversation happens, and the structure that you create around check-ins and the role that you play as a leader through the entire 90 days. It has to do with a lot of accountability, not just on the part of the employee, but on your part too. So this conversation is just going to be the beginning. What makes a reset really stick and be worthwhile is what you both do consistently. So imagine you sit down with a team member, you have the conversation, you tell them things need to change, and they nod and they agree. They seem genuinely motivated. And you walk out of that conversation feeling like something has shifted. And then 2, maybe 3 weeks later, nothing is different. Everything is exactly the same. Does this sound familiar to you? I can tell you I have experienced this for sure. So here's what is usually happening in this instance. The conversation was real and the intention behind it was very real as well. But what came after the conversation was vague. And you're not inspecting what you are expecting. Maybe you said something like, let's check in a few weeks. And you even sent an email with some general notes, but you just kind of hoped that the conversation itself would be enough to create the momentum for the employee, but it wasn't. Not because your team member doesn't care. That's not it at all. And not because you didn't care, but because a conversation without structure behind it, one conversation, it's just a conversation. It doesn't create accountability. It doesn't create any clarity. And it definitely does not give the employee a roadmap that they can follow. So that's what we're going to be building today. Let's go. Let's do it. So the check-in structure is what will keep everybody on track. This is the part that separates a reset that actually works from a reset that kind of just quietly dies after a few weeks. And that's consistency, not intensity, consistency. Okay. So you don't need this like marathon of check-in sessions. Like I mentioned on last week's episode, we're not trying to be micromanagers. Nobody has time for that. I literally, sometimes when I hear that someone is a micromanager, I'm like, how do you have time? How do you have that time to micromanage? I don't have the time. So you don't need to hover, okay? You want them to be independent in their role. That is what allows you to do your job with the confidence that they are doing theirs. So you don't need to make this team member feel like they're under a microscope just because you've had this conversation with them. What you do need is a predictable, regular rhythm of communication that keeps the expectations top of mind, visible, and gives the both of you a chance to course correct if you need it over time. Maybe they have concerns or questions or a worry, and maybe you just need to hear reassurance from them. So here's the structure that I like to recommend for a 90-day reset. So weekly check-ins for the first month. It's 15, maybe 20 minutes max. And it's not a performance review. Just to be clear, this is not a performance review. They are working conversations. And you're asking things like, what worked well for you this week? Where did you run into friction? What do your numbers look like? They should have access to their numbers. I hope that they do. And you can also come to the conversation with numbers to show them, hey, look, last week you were here, to this week you're in a better place. Or maybe if the numbers are the same or worse, you guys can troubleshoot and work through why that might have happened. Maybe there was a very, very large stack of appointments that one client had booked and then they got sick or couldn't come in or canceled within the window that they were allowed to cancel in, and it didn't get rebooked in time. So those are things that you can talk through with your employee to figure out what's going on, why this is happening, how can we fix it, what plan can we come up with together, right? Because this is an us problem, not a me versus you problem. And then you're able to almost put the ball into the employee's court and just say, what do you need from me to feel supported in this? You might share some of your observations, some things that you've seen work for yourself in the past. Keep in mind that while you're having these conversations, I really hope that you do not compare the team member in front of you to any other team member. We only want to be better than our past selves. So if the employee in front of you maybe needs to tweak how they're checking people out at the end of the service so that they can get them, like something that I worked on with a team member that has worked so well for her ever since, and I'm so proud of her, is even though I had put her through the training of how to do this, I think it just needed some reinforcement and some confidence. She was worried that she would feel salesy if she asked the client to rebook before they paid. For some reason, she had some personal hangups around that conversation of let's get you rebooked before we ever talk money. And I think once we just kind of talked that out, reframed her thinking to be like, wouldn't you want this client to continue getting fantastic results? And I think that there's also a layer that should not go untalked about, unspoken to, about how you can ask people to rebook with you and have it not be selfish. I think that there's this like misconception that when you're getting people rebooked, it's selfish. It's something that I've run into quite a bit, not just with my own employees, but with the employees of clients that I work with, that they are actually, the team member, the esthetician, feels like it's selfish to ask for the rebook. And that's such an interesting concept. So I personally have never felt that way, but it is common. It's happened enough to make me think, okay, this is common. But remember, it's your job as the leader, as you're stepping up in this role into this new version of yourself, to develop the person in front of you into the best version of themselves. And so showing them, this is what's working. Let's see what we can improve on in this area. Or I noticed, your rebook came up to 58% this week as opposed to 50. That shows me that the person is trying, that they're trying and they're trying to get better. And from there you can say, okay, this is great. Keep doing what you're doing. Here's what I'd like to focus on next week. And then you continue the conversation that way and make it about how we're going to solve this problem together. Okay. That is a check-in. Every conversation gets documented, not in like a heavy bureaucratic way, but like in a simple keeping a running log, date that it was discussed, what was discussed, the progress that was noted, what the next action steps are. This kind of documentation protects the both of you, and it creates a record that the process happened in general and that the support was provided and what expectations were communicated clearly throughout the whole conversation. So at the 30-day and 60-day marks, I do kind of a slightly deeper review once just to look at the full picture. What's improving? What is still inconsistent? Are there any patterns emerging that need to be addressed? This will really help to show your team member their own progress, and it's structured in a way that is genuinely motivating, right? And one more thing on check-ins, they need to be protected. They cannot just be randomly canceled unless it is absolutely necessary. And even if it is canceled, it should be rescheduled. You cannot manage what is not measured, and you have to make time for this. You can't be too busy. This is literally your job, because every time that a check-in gets canceled or skipped, or, an unintentional message that you're sending them instead of having a meeting, that reset it's showing them that the reset isn't serious, and your team member will take their cues from you. You are the expectation. And so the action that you are showing them by showing up consistently, showing up for them, with them, it's going to show them how serious they need to be taking it as well. So before you leave that very first initial conversation, put everything on the calendar. I make it really simple. I just do a weekly session, 30 minutes. It's typically 30 minutes before they start their day. I do split shifts, so it's either 30 minutes before they start their day or 30 minutes at the end of their day, whichever one is more convenient for me. I'm not going to stay at the spa until 8 p.m. and do a 30-minute check-in once a week. I'm just going to do it at the beginning of their shift when they come in at 2, or at 1:30. So block that time right then and there. Do it with them on their calendar too. It's on both of your calendars. And now you're able to move forward and know, okay, this needs to be done. It's important. And then the second thing that I want to really make sure that I address in this episode is the accountability portion, not just the accountability of the employee and how you're going to keep them accountable, but it's also the accountability of you as the leader. And this is the point that I think surprises a lot of spa owners, because when we think about accountability in the context of an employee reset, we naturally focus on the team member and are they improving or showing up or, hitting their goals. But I really want you to hear and understand that the responsibility is also on you too. And if you do not show up consistently as a leader, then this reset will not work, no matter how motivated your team member is. So let's just kind of talk about and address what responsibility looks like for you. And I'm saying this because I'm also saying this because I thought that I had, all the qualities of a responsible leader. And then it was actually my husband who was like, what the heck? Like, you can't just tell them that they're not doing a good job and then expect them to do better. Like, that nothing is going to come of that. I'm like, what do you mean? And he really helped to open my eyes of, examples of great leaders that he's had in his career path. And I'm like, wow, I thought I was doing this and I'm not. I could be better. And that's a great opportunity. I love hearing feedback like that. It's such a great opportunity to learn. So that's why I'm going to share this. And I hope that it still helps you to get some little glance of what this, if there is anything that you could glean from this, then I would consider it still useful. So responsibility of you as the leader looks like following through on the support that you committed to. So if you said that you would provide additional training, you need to provide it. If you said that you would give feedback on client consultations, then you need to actually do that. And if you committed 2 weekly check-ins, which I hope that you do, then you need to show up to every single one prepared and present. Okay, it's not something that you get too busy for. It's just something that you show up and you have all the data already there. It looks like giving feedback in real time, not just at the check-ins. If something happens on the floor that's relevant to the employee reset, it's really important to address it in the moment. You're not going to shout from across the spa like, you didn't do this the right way. Like, that is not the way to do it. but instead, obviously, be very calm, brief, constructive, kind, all the things that you would want to hear from someone who is giving you feedback about how to be better. We obviously don't want to make them feel overwhelmed. And this goes not just for the weekly check-in, but for the things that we're telling them in the moment as well. Timely feedback is much more useful and constructive and much better received when it is given not all at once. Do you get what I'm saying? So like once a week, if you're having a conversation with somebody and you've just stockpiled all these things that you want to talk about, it can be very overwhelming. But if you've noticed that something is starting to happen in the moment, it's a great opportunity to be like, whoa, okay. That was a great observation that I just saw. Like and this goes both for like the improvements and the opportunities for improvement. So celebrate the genuine progress. If you see the, employee doing the things that were discussed, celebrate that. Give them a high five. Do whatever feels, right and appropriate. And when your team member hits a goal or improves a metric or, demonstrates that they are trying and that the behavior that you've been working for together has been achieved, then acknowledge it specifically out loud. Like, I noticed you handled that situation with the client completely different than you would have a month ago. That's exactly what I was hoping to see. I'm so happy for you. That's, it's so amazing. Thank you. How do you feel? I like to ask that. How do you feel? How does it make you feel? And they're usually like, yeah, I'm liking it. It's good. It feels good. It feels good. It was kind of scary, but it feels good. That kind of specific recognition is fuel. And it really tells them that their work is being seen and that it makes a difference. And so make sure that you are acknowledging those little wins in the moment too, not just the opportunities for feedback, right? So responsibility as a leader, it looks like you staying cool, calm, collected, regulated, even, and just like steady throughout the entire 90-day process, right? There will be weeks that feel like maybe progress is sliding backwards, but then there are also going to be ones where we're seeing improvement. So make sure that you stay calm and consistent and professional through all of it. That is what leadership throughout this process requires. So when you show up in this way, two things happen, right? Your team member has the best possible chance of genuine success. And regardless of how the reset ends, you can say that with complete confidence that you gave this person every opportunity to grow, right? So write down 2 or 3 things that you're going to be committing to as a leader during this reset, not what you expect from your team member. That was what we did last week. This is what are you personally committing to? And it needs to be just as specific as the expectation that you set for your team member. So 2 things I want you to take away from today. The first is be consistent and build your check-in structure before you start. Put it on the calendar, both your calendar and their calendar. Protect it. It doesn't need to be anything insane or intense, just 15 to 20 minutes. Make sure you come prepared and present. And then number 2 is your role in this process is active. It's not just like a supervisor type of role, and follow through with your commitments. Give feedback in real time, celebrate the real progress as it's happening, and lead with consistency throughout the entire 90 days. Okay, that is part 2 of the 90-day employee reset. I'm going to be talking about what happens at the end of the 90-day process and what happens if someone succeeds and what happens if someone doesn't hit the goals. So we will wrap up this series next week and talk about all those outcomes, how to recognize genuine improvement versus the short-term performance, and how to close the reset cleanly and professionally. So whether it ends with a win or maybe an extension of the 90-day or a separation of some kind, I hope that this series genuinely gives you the tools that you can actually use. I'd love for you to be subscribed, and if you could leave a review on Apple, I would so appreciate it. It means more than I can say. Share this with another spa owner friend, because I would love to get the word out and help people make their businesses beautiful and bougie and boring. So take care. I will see you in the next episode. If you enjoyed this episode, then you'll really enjoy my free training where I show you the exact system that I use in my own spa to pay myself more. Head on over to amandaluisaconsulting.com/more to download today. I'll see you next week on Bougie and Boring.